the right moment with the right messages. And that in itself is a huge challenge for organizations today. There are all kinds of solutions that allow us to do that, including understanding the customer journey. We'll get into that in a moment. Of course, we need to have a powerful and compelling offer. We need to be talking to our customers with a message that's going to overcome their fear, their inertia, their procrastination of not wanting to move forward with a decision immediately. We need to give them something that is going to compel them and move them to action. And that's really important. We'll speak about that in a moment as well. Of course, we need to have the right message. So relevance in today's marketplace being so fragmented and cluttered with marketing communication, we need to make sure that everything that we do, everything that we say is extremely focused and totally relevant. So the right message is very important. And last but not least, certainly not least, if we believe the numbers that we saw a moment ago, picking the right channels, and I insist on channels as the focus. We need to be picking the right channels that are going to produce the right results. So an integrated multi-channel approach in today's marketplace is critically important. How do we integrate multiple channels to achieve marketing success and strong ROI? And we'll look at that as well as we go through this presentation. So let's talk about the first point, which is the right time. Essentially, what we're talking about here is the customer journey, or as some research organizations refer to as the path to purchase. So how do customers move forward in their decision-making process to achieve the point where they actually move forward and purchase and buy and become loyal to the brand? This graphic simplifies the process itself. Of course, it is more complex. There are multiple stages involved at each one of these main phases. But of course, we have the essential starting point, which is the availability of the customer, the need that is perhaps not even understood by the customer at that point in time. Dreaming about something, being available to make a change in the way they act and what they use and perceive and buy and so on. So that is traditionally been the focus of branding and marketing communication, creating awareness around the need and attracting customers to it. The next two phases, learning and choosing, of course, are the focus of transactional marketing and traditional direct marketing, and getting consumers to understand more about the product, get them the right information at the right time, and then leading them to choose. In a relationship focus, we also need to layer in a dimension of helping the customer make the right choices, providing the information at the right time so that they understand why this given product is right for them, how to pick the right thing, how to make the right choices, and then, of course, make that choice moving forward. So call to action is still critically important in a relationship marketing journey. Now, as we move forward past the purchase, there's a tremendous opportunity in what we call the prepare phase, essentially the anticipation of the purchase, of the use of the product itself after the purchase. And depending on the category that we're in, we will find that prepare phase may last anywhere from a few hours or a few days to a few months, depending on the different category. For example, for a vacation destination purchase, that prepare phase may actually be 2 or 3 months, whereas if it's the purchase of, for example, a piece of electronics, well, maybe that prepare period, that lag may be only several hours or several days. So depending on the situation, we have an opportunity to educate the customers so that they understand how to get the most enjoyment or the most value out of that purchase. And of course, there's the use phase where the customer actually lives the experience of the product they've purchased. And of course, it's, as we know, it's all about the experience, the customer experience, the gratification that they receive through the use of the product itself. And presumably, if that experience is positive and it is aligned with the expectations that we set out in the first 4 phases, then we have an opportunity as marketers to deepen that relationship, to grow the value of what we provide to the customer, to increase their frequency, to increase the overall value of what we are able to derive from that relationship and provide in return. Moving on to a diversification of the relationship into multiple categories where we can satisfy the customer's needs, and ultimately lead them to become brand advocates in the share phase. Of course, as I've mentioned multiple times in the past, the share phase now with social media and word of mouth can happen at any one of these different stages, so we have to understand that sharing dynamic and allow customers to be able to express themselves as they move through this process, through this journey. Now, of course, we have multiple channels, multiple media that we can use to be able to move the customer forward through that journey, and we need to make sure that we provide the right information at the right time. Presenting an offer when a customer doesn't even know that they have a need, that they have the ability to change their current situation, is probably quite too early in the process. So we need to make sure that we're delivering that message in a timely way and respecting that sequence that needs to happen. So we have multiple channels. You may recognize this from past webinars or presentations where we're talking about the Tremblant Ski Resort case. We have the articulation of multiple contacts through email, the use of direct mail, which is a very powerful tool in providing depth of information and personalization of the experience so they understand the total value of what's provided in terms of the emotional impact of that vacation experience that's provided at Tremblant. Online tools, banner ads, the actual website, nurturing series through email, the Facebook page, and of course the video channel through YouTube. So all of these are part of the tool chest that's available to us. The question is, which tools do we use? How do we articulate them as a sequence to be able to move the customer forward through their journey, through their decision-making process? So making the right choices is critically important, and understanding how each of these can impact the customer's understanding of what value you have, what you can bring to their needs, and be able to satisfy them in a greater way. Now, let's look at the next phase, which is the right offer. Now, as I said earlier in the beginning, the right offer is critically important because what we're trying to do here is to create a moment in time where the value of what's provided is greater than the resistance to actually move forward. It's greater than the risk of taking that decision. It's greater than all of the effort that's required to move someone from a state of inertia to a state of action. So what are some of the things that need to be done? A strong offer has 4 key elements. The first is value. So I mentioned that a moment ago. Providing sufficient value and making sure that it's clear to the customer what your product, what your brand has to offer. Not just claiming that it's a great product, but demonstrating how it will respond to a need. What are the benefits? What are the key benefits of the product? And it's not just about price, it's about what it delivers over and above that in terms of experience, right? So critically important. Part of that value, of course, is the exclusivity of the offer. So it may be limited in time, in accessibility and availability to a specific number of individuals. It has to have some form of exclusivity and privilege attached to it. So very important to make that, it amplifies the value of what we have to offer. Which leads us to the third point, which is the urgency. Now, this is probably the most important part of a powerful offer, because if the offer does not provide urgency to act, then simply it won't produce the results that we're trying to achieve. So very important that we have a cutoff date, that it be sufficiently close and yet far enough away to allow the time for people to actually act on it. It needs to have a lot of power around it. And of course, if we have a cutoff date, we have to make sure that it's clearly visible everywhere. It shouldn't be hidden in the MICE type of the legal text. It needs to be front and center in your call to action, so that if it is that it's December 4th is the cutoff date, then that needs to be very clearly expressed in all of your communication. And then finally, and probably the most important part of the offer, is its credibility, right? If you have the same offer that comes back day after day, week after week, and it's always available to consumers, then the offer loses credibility. It won't be sufficiently compelling to create the momentum that you need to move customers forward. So being able to establish a credible offer that is not repeated every week, that is finite in its duration, that is available only for a very limited time, and respecting that cutoff date is critically important as well. So you don't want to be able to say, you don't want to say, here's the cutoff date, oh, and by the way, because we're stretching that out to take advantage of every remaining possibility. We need to make sure that we have credibility when we say this is the best offer of the year. It has to be the best offer of the year. Let me show you an example of creating urgency and the impact of that urgency on response. Here are a couple of things that were taken from the Slope Fillers website. We do a lot of work in the ski industry, so it tends to implement some of the things that we present to you. The chart on the left-hand side shows two different response curves, two very different response curves. The first one at the top is a time-limited offer. And as you see, over a 30-day period, with the cutoff date being on the last day, you see how the response curve slowly ramps up, and the majority of all the responses arrive in the last 4 to 5 days of the offer. The last day of the offer is, in fact, the greatest day of the entire campaign. So, procrastination being the critical factor, moving customers to action is a very difficult thing to do. That urgency at the end of the campaign, with the cutoff date being there, helps to create that curve. So if you are creating a campaign using a long horizon time period here of 30 days or more, could be up to 6 weeks typically, then using direct mail is a great way to take advantage of that long curve because it has a long shelf life. So that's a very important thing to keep in mind. Look at the second chart just below that, and you see a quantity limited offer with 85% of all the responses coming in on the first day, and then the remaining 15% coming in on the second day. At that point, the quantity that was available is totally exhausted, and so that's the end of the campaign. Very short window of opportunity, ideal for using email. Because of that short time frame, it's very difficult to control using direct mail. However, what's really interesting is to be able to harness the two possibilities and have a time-limited offer using a direct mail campaign and layering in email and additional short-term limited quantity offers that have an even greater incentive to acting, and combining the two curves together to achieve some very interesting lifts in response. So I thought that was a very interesting way of looking at it. This comparison between the two shows us the impact of one versus the other, and creating that urgency is critically important. Limited quantity does that in spades. A little more difficult to manage, however. Now, when you have a compelling offer and you have a very strong cutoff date, we want to really leverage and capitalize on the urgency that you can create. So here's an example for the Sublime Pass that was launched in September of last year, and you see that the message is very clear. It's a season at Tremblant for $399, and compared to a full price pass, this is a very attractive price. It's 114 days of skiing for just under $400. As you can see in the center, you only have 72 hours to start to take advantage of this offer, and it starts immediately. As you receive this email message, it's very clear that you need to act to take advantage of it. And it's followed up throughout the campaign with reminders as you go. It counts down, and on the last day, or the day before the end of the offer, you receive a reminder saying there are only 24 hours left, and this number is actually displayed on the website, and you see the countdown occurring, and it just creates that momentum that you need to be able to get people to act, and this was a very successful campaign. So keep in mind, very powerful offer with great value, with great urgency, allows you to create strong, powerful results. Using a combination of mail and email to be able to build that momentum is a great way of doing it as well. Now, talking about email and direct mail, picking the right channels and articulating a sequence of communication to move your customer forward through that customer journey is really important. So again, our Tremblant case back here again, what I wanted to show you here is really the importance of finding the ideal sequence and testing different possibilities to understand which tools will be most useful, most impactful at different stages. And you want to be able to play around with the timing and the combinations and the sequencing of all of these elements to make sure that you're optimizing it. testing the different possibilities, trying to find the optimal way of doing it, playing around with the timing of when you send the messages out, what the lead time is, when the different pieces will hit the marketplace, is what you need to be looking at. One of the challenges that we have, though, in marketing organizations today is that the focus on testing is not as great as it should be. Here's some research that Adobe just published about a month ago, really. Very significant results. The number of respondents is quite high. You see that in 2013 there are 1,858 respondents to this study. And what it tells us basically is that half the businesses that were interviewed do not place any value on testing as a decision-making tool. And that's sad, because by testing different approaches, by testing different combinations, we are able to optimize our results. And as you see in the adjoining columns, the level of involvement of testing at different levels in the organization is relatively low. So the entire company is aligned with testing. That would only be in 11% of organizations. So it's very sad to see that. We need to be doing a lot more testing to understand what are the right ways of moving forward, how to make our combinations and our sequencing optimal and most effective and most efficient. So we need to keep that in mind. Now, we also need to make sure that we are delivering things when customers are looking for the information. And there's an interesting article in the April issue of McKinsey Quarterly. If you don't subscribe to that, I encourage you to do so. It is available free on the web, so please take a look. The article essentially talks about the impact of personalization and technology on the consumer's ability to get information when they want it, to be able to be marketed to when they choose to be marketed to. And then that will have a profound impact on the way organizations market their products to consumers. Now, I don't have an example of real-time marketing or everywhere marketing when we are essentially present constantly through the customer's journey. But here's an example that was created with using multiple channels to drive requests for a given product. So combining email and banner ads and print advertising and television, driving to web to a website that allowed consumers to identify which products are right for them. And then using that information, populating a database and sending out a sample and an advance notification email to get customers to try a new product, measuring the impact through trackable coupons, and then continuing communication after the fact to be able to build the value of the relationship and introduce customers to new categories or other categories in the brand portfolio. What's really significant about this is really the comparison between the control group, which essentially is made up of people that have the same profile as the customers we're trying to acquire, but contacted through rented lists of very qualified individuals, compared to those who actually make that positive action of requesting to receive a sample, an offer, a coupon, and so on. And basically what we see here is that the response, the purchase rate after the communication through the direct mail piece is actually almost or more than twice as great. So the baseline of 100 is the index for the control group, and our requesters have an index of 212 or 2.12 times greater purchase rate. So you see that the simple fact of allowing a customer to request to receive information to be marketed to with permission allows you to elevate the overall impact of what you're trying to do. Now, relevance is critically important today. So the relevance of that offer that we saw a moment ago was that it actually used a fairly broad media buy to attract customers to a website and qualify them, and then market to them in a very specific way, very customized way. So creating that relevance is important, and using the various tools that are available to us now in terms of variable content communication is really the key to driving that relevance. As we move from a brand-centric model to a customer-centric model, we need to be able to communicate with customers on an increasing number of dimensions and levels. So here we see in this graph essentially illustrating the fact that in a mass marketing environment, we're talking to a customer, all customers, using basically no dimensions. We're talking to them with a single, uniform, universal message. And that's great in a mass marketing environment when we're trying to build awareness and so on. But when we get closer to a customer-centric model where we're trying to build a long-term, lasting, sustainable relationship with our customers, that's simply not enough. So instead of using the typical segmented approach of using demographic information to be able to address customers in different ways, we move into things such as the use of personas, where we start talking to customers based on their goals and their concerns and their misconceptions and understanding of the product, language barriers and so on, and their knowledge and levels of literacy and so on, and the triggers that bring them to act on a product offer and so on. And as we get closer to one-on-one marketing, where we're talking to the individual, we then start layering in very personal characteristics such as physical attributes and health concerns and so on, their requirements, their values and motivations and aspirations and so on. So we're able to deliver a message that is increasingly focused on each individual customer to be able to make our product as relevant, or our service as relevant as possible. Now, there are 4 essential dimensions that we can use to be able to create that relevance, and we, depending on the category that we're in or the product that we have to offer, well, we might use all of these 4 or 1 or 2, depending on what's appropriate. So there are the typical rational motivations, including price and characteristics and features and so on, that help us to deliver that relevance of the message, but also the emotional impact of the product itself or the service that we have to offer. And for example, going back to our vacation experience, the emotional impact of spending time with your friends, with your family, with your children, and reconnecting in a meaningful way, having a positive vacation experience is critically important. So adapting our message based on that emotional connection can drive relevance in the message. Physical attributes, of course, and particularly in the world of beauty, we've done a lot of work in that area, and things such as the eye color, hair color, skin shade, and so on can have a very strong impact on the right product that you need to choose. So layering in physical attributes, and it might simply be location as a physical characteristic that may determine or make a variation on our message more relevant to the consumer. And then finally, the 4th dimension, which in many cases is the dominant one, which is the relational aspect, how we interrelate or interact with individuals in our immediate family, our friends, our community, and so on, and how using that information and that understanding allows us to create greater relevance in our communication. So again, back to our Tremblant case, we have an example here of the 5 basic building blocks of our relevant campaign, using the 5 basic personas of the seniors group in the upper left-hand corner, couples, often on a romantic escapade or getaway, people traveling alone, people traveling with as a family with young children, and groups of friends. Each of these basic personas is looking for a different experience, is looking for a different type of emotional engagement, an experience that creates a different kind of interaction with the people that they are traveling with. So our message then becomes much more focused on the total experience and the emotional engagement that customers are looking for. So using things such as the goals, why are you traveling? What's the purpose of your vacation? Life cycle, such as when was the last time you were here? You've never been here, different message. You've been here repeatedly over the years, or you haven't been here in a long time, allows us to make the message more relevant. Talking to the needs, the level of skill, the interests, and the relationships, as I mentioned a moment ago, all allow us to create that relevance in the communication. So we're able to produce marketing communication, be it in direct mail, as you see here on screen, or through email, allows us to be able to tailor the message to make it perfectly relevant to a family with young children, as you see through the choices and recommendations that are made here, the products that are recommended, the imagery, the copy is all focused on families with kids, whereas this version is for couples seeking a romantic getaway, some time away from the family, from the pressures of day-to-day, with relaxing activities, and basically some time to spend alone. So that allows us to create the relevance in our message. So we now have those basic building blocks in place. We now have to look at the sequence of what we're trying to achieve, understanding what are the goals that we're overall moving towards. And so there are basically 3 categories of goals that we need to consider. Realizing and keeping in mind that when we do customer acquisition, finding customers essentially, we have to understand what the impact will be on customer retention and customer growth. We need to acquire customers using campaigns, tactics, information, and so on, offers that will produce customers that have sufficient value, that will remain loyal over time, provided that we give them a positive experience. And so we need to make sure that we keep these 3 phases in mind in everything that we do. A customer acquisition campaign that focuses on getting a large number of customers without keeping in mind the retention aspect or the growth, potential growth over time, would be a deficient strategy, because we will be creating a bunch of customers up front. Acquiring those customers will have a cost associated with it, and if they don't maintain their activity, if they don't grow in value over time, then we're simply investing money in the wrong place. So we have to keep those considerations in mind throughout everything that we do. With a relationship marketing mindset, when we're looking for customers, we have to be able to achieve a balance between asking for the order and giving value in return. And that value, as I mentioned earlier, goes beyond the simple product itself, but also includes the dimensions of information to help customers make the right choices, ensuring that the customer gets the product that is right for them, that they are able to get maximum value and enjoyment out of that choice. So guiding the customer forward through the process, making sure that they're sufficiently educated through our messages and our communication, allows us to ensure that the purchase experience, the customer experience, will be in line with the customer's expectations. So achieving that balance is really important. We have to realize that a relationship is based on this very simple equation, that is understanding the customer's needs, who they are, what they're looking for, what their priorities are, and then building trust around that communication, making sure that we do have credible offers, that we are providing valuable, credible information, that we're helping customers to make the right choices, make the right decisions. It's critically important to building that strong, sustainable relationship with the customer, because if we act in an irresponsible way, communicating things that are not necessarily true, then we're destroying the trust that's so important to allow customers to tell us more about themselves. If there's no trust, they will not provide you with the information you need to be able to give them a relevant experience. So it's really a catch-22. We absolutely need those critical dimensions. And stealing a page from the content marketing approach of demand generation, we also need to understand that there is a process involved at the relationship level of creating that relationship, creating that initial transaction. So essentially using multi-channel communication to drive traffic to the website, to drive traffic to the call center or to your store, connecting with the customer in a meaningful way so you're able to collect information, identify who the customer is, what they're looking for, what their priorities are, what kind of experience they're looking for. Then nurturing that relationship until the customer is ready to buy through ongoing communication, and then finally converting them to purchase so that they will actually act on what you have to offer. So, the call to action is very important at that stage. Keeping this process in mind, we don't immediately ask for the order. We make sure that we understand what the customer is looking for, who they are, and are able to continually communicate in a meaningful way, providing value throughout that chain. Let's go back to this very relevant chart from the DMA's response rate report from 2012, just keeping in mind in a customer acquisition environment what kind of tools we can use and what the relative performance of those tools would be. So we see that by and large direct mail provides us with the highest response rate of all the tools that are available to us for customer acquisition, with an average of 1.2 for a business size, a number 10 size direct mail package. The next column is for oversizing, of course, the postcard. Comparing that to email and display, web display advertising, and paid search, we see that the total number of individuals that will respond is far greater with direct mail, giving us a critical mass of respondents. Email much lower in terms of overall response to a customer acquisition campaign through email. And we understand implicitly the difficulty of recruiting a new customer using a channel such as email. The question is, how do we combine these 2 or 3 or 4 different channels in a meaningful, impactful way, creating that synergy that moves the customer forward and amplifies their value? Very important to keep in mind that direct mail should be part of your mix and should be used in association with all the other tools. Now let's talk about customer growth. Very important, once you've acquired a customer, how do you put in place a strategy that will allow you gradually over time, or in an accelerated way as well, to be able to achieve customer growth, growing that value moving forward so that they buy more frequently and find a greater number of needs responded to through what you have to offer. Let us again look at the numbers from the DMA report and realize that, again, here direct mail provides us with the highest response rate overall. These are national averages, and we see that for a standard letter size direct mail package, we have a 3.4% response rate. Oversized provides us with a significant healthy lift, whereas postcards actually will depress response significantly compared to the 2 other formats. So here, postcards would allow us to save money, but not achieve the same overall impact as what we would achieve through a standard or an oversized package. Again, we see a differential between the response rates of the 2 groups, and we see that email is much less effective. It is less costly, of course, so our ROI, our pure ROI, would be greater with email because the cost per response is low. But when we combine it with the question of the overall response and the number of individuals in your database that you're talking to, the direct mail package provides you with more transactions, allows you to increase your penetration and your retention of your customers, so a more impactful way. Combining the 2 together allows us to be able to lift those numbers up significantly and achieve greater customer retention, which is really important because every time we sacrifice response, we're talking to fewer and fewer customers. We're achieving fewer and fewer transactions, and so we're sacrificing value. It's critically important to understand the concept of lifetime value when we look at these numbers, saying, okay, every time we lose a customer because we didn't communicate with them effectively, then we're sacrificing not just the immediate purchase, but also the chain of communication, or the chain of value that exists after that. So here's a simple illustration of the value of a Starbucks customer. I took this from the Kissmetrics site. Very interesting stuff. You should go and take a look at Kissmetrics occasionally. If you do have the opportunity to do so, you'll learn a lot. So Starbucks coffee, the value of a purchase is far greater, in fact, than the cost of a single coffee. So to put it in perspective, we need to look at the average value of a customer on a weekly basis, the frequency of purchase, and then average it all out to understand what the weekly value of a transaction would be. And then using different types of equations, from a simple multiplication of the total purchase price over a period of time, 52 weeks, 20 years, versus a version that looks at the actual contribution to profit, the profitability of all of those transactions, or another approach that's a little more detailed in arriving at that overall lifetime value. We realize that the value of a Starbucks customer through a 20-year lifetime ranges from $5,500 all the way to a maximum of $25,000. So understanding this lifetime value, this concept of lifetime value, we can better appreciate the investment that needs to be made, or that can be made, to retain a customer, to acquire a new customer, putting all of the marketing expenditures in perspective relative to the customer's value itself. And of course, we need to understand and have in place a strategy around customer migration. Finding ways, creating offers, tools, and campaign strategies to be able to, at a minimum, renew the customer's current behavior, and in the ideal situation, constantly move the customer forward through that upgrade path, through that migration path, to increase their value over time. We certainly don't want to allow a customer to downgrade unless we realize that the customer is not appropriate for what we have to offer, which would be a rare exception. Let me give you an illustration taken from the WebEx website that shows us the product migration path that this organization has established, starting off with a very powerful acquisition offer, which is a simple, free, basic product that is available free of charge. There's very limited constraints involved, so there's no resistance to moving forward here. You simple sign up, you provide a minimal amount of information, and all of a sudden you can use it. Then the next level at $24 per month adds additional value because it has specific characteristics that are meaningful to individuals who have a greater usage of the product. So allowing you to access more people for your meetings is the first threshold at $24. And then as you move forward, you'll see that there are specific features that are involved in each of these levels that will be of value to individuals in the previous level. So if you start using WebEx a lot, you'll find that all of a sudden the best value will be to move up to the premium 25 level, and so on. So they have a very clear vision of how the customers will be acquired through the basic or identified through the basic, then converted to the premium 8, 25, and 100 programs. And these steps are very carefully planned to make sure that they provide value to get customers to move forward. So super important to have that migration path in mind, understand how to move the customer through that process. Here an example of something that we did when we launched that Sublime Pass that I mentioned a moment ago, securing the existing base of customers through a direct mail campaign to existing pass holders, existing high-value pass holders, to prevent churn by highlighting the value of what was provided and providing a price discount or an incentive in terms of a credit to their account. And then upgrading existing low-value subscribers or customers using a very urgent, strong offer at $3.99 for a very short period of time to move all of these individuals who had only purchased a low-involvement product to move to a greater higher frequency product. And of course, for these individuals, the next step will be to go to the full season pass. Now, one of the tools that we have available to us to be able to help understand which individuals should be moving forward and what are the most appropriate tools is, of course, analytics. And this slide illustrates the work that Target, which is coming to Canada now, in a very significant way. Their ability to be able to analyze each line of transaction for each customer in their database and understand and predict what products are most likely to be of value to the customers. So this article, this is the cover of the New York Times Magazine from February of is it this year or last? I can't remember. And essentially talking about their ability to predict women who are pregnant in their database. Despite the fact that they don't have that information, they use analytics to be able to analyze your transaction behavior and identify products that will identify the fact that you are in fact pregnant. Being able to then offer you appropriate products for maternity and children's furniture and so on and so forth. And so it's very interesting to see the power of analytics and predictive modeling that allow us to identify the next best product for our customers, to be able to establish a powerful migration path to move the customers forward. And so the last stage is keeping customers, keeping in mind that we need to understand who are our best customers, use analytics to be able to identify high-value, high-probability customers that can move up in value, and then managing the cost on all the customers who have less value, who in fact may have a negative return for the organization. We always have to keep in mind that the top 5% of our customers represent 150% of our actual profits. So each high-value customer that we lose because we don't communicate with them effectively actually has a direct impact on our bottom line. Promoting products that build loyalty by themselves is very important, and this is one of the things that we did through the Maybelline New York campaign that we did a few years ago, promoting the right type of foundation, because foundation is a loyalty building block for the cosmetics industry. So making sure that customers know which products are going to provide the greatest value creates greater loyalty, and thus it impacts the whole product purchase cycle. And then last but not least, we have to also keep in mind that we constantly have to reactivate inactive customers, that we need to constantly and consistently attempt to reacquire customers who have lapsed, who've churned out, have gone to the competitor, or simply stopped buying from us. This is an example from PictoChart that is an infographic software as a service. I purchased a license and never went back, never used the service because I simply have no time. But they were very smart in sending me this email to get me to reactivate my service, to use it, because they know that I won't renew if I don't use it. Keep in mind that the cost to acquire a customer is always greater than the cost of reactivation. So we consistently need to include lapsed customers, inactive customers, past customers in our communication to make sure that we maximize our reactivation. We should invest to the same level in reactivation as we do in acquisition. So if it costs $200 to acquire a customer, we should spend up to that amount to be able to reactivate them, because otherwise we are simply investing money in the wrong place. So critically important to keep that in mind, managing your costs by focusing on reactivation and reacquisition. So we've run out of time, and we're at the end of the presentation. So in summary, let me just reiterate the key things that we've discussed here today. First of all and foremost, think process and next steps. Relationship marketing is a sequence of communication. It's a sequence of successive steps that lead us from the first stages of that customer journey all the way to brand advocacy. Follow that journey and make sure that you deliver the right information at the right time. Make sure that it is urgent and that it is perceived to have value through a very powerful and compelling offer. Make sure that you test everything you do to make sure that you're doing the right things. But of course, test the things that will be the most significant, that will have the greatest impact. Always think beyond acquisition. Make sure that anything that you do from an acquisition perspective will build value down the chain, that the customers that you acquire will become loyal, that they will grow in value. Make sure that you keep the right customers, that the ones that have the greatest value currently, that have the greatest loyalty, but also those who have the greatest likelihood of becoming high-value customers. And finally, make sure that everything that you do converges towards growing their value. And if you do that, then you're going to be amplifying that, what we saw in that hourglass at the beginning, making sure that the total value of your customers grows over time, and you'll achieve a more prosperous marketing activity. So, thank you very much. I think we have a question period. Rodrigo?
Yes.
How are we doing?
We're doing well. A quick question from Leanne, who wanted to know if the return rates that you were showing earlier, were they based on addressed or unaddressed direct mail?
That's an excellent question. The response rates that you saw are for addressed mail. The U.S. only recently have introduced an unaddressed solution, so these benchmarks are specifically address ad mail in those different formats.
Great. Don't be shy, folks, to type your questions. I have another question here. According to your experience, what are the major obstacles to implementing an integrated multi-channel strategy?
Well, I think the biggest challenge is changing the mindset. You know, we all come from a mass marketing background where we understand building awareness through tools that allow us to reach as many customers as possible at a very low cost with a certain level of frequency to be able to build that famous awareness. Here we're in a relationship marketing environment where we need to talk to the right people. We need to say the right things, deliver the right message, and move them forward through that cycle. So changing the mindset, understanding the dynamics of relationship marketing, understanding that we need to know who our customers are individually, be able to talk to them directly, will allow us to be able to move forward. So education is going to be very important in that respect, and understanding how we need to be able to engage with our customers on an individual level. I mean, that is really the most significant one, is changing that mindset.
Great. Jennifer wants to know, her marketing budget is fixed. How can she convince upper management to increase her marketing and direct mail budget in particular?
You know, that happens consistently. I think all of our clients have had that challenge over the years. And again, it's a question of mindset, understanding that in relationship marketing, in an integrated campaign where we can actually measure the impact of what we do, we know and can calculate how much we need to be able to achieve the results that we're looking for. So again, this boils down to education and helping the management team, and particularly the CFO, who should become our best friend. As relationship marketers, we certainly can deliver value. We can demonstrate tangibly how our campaigns deliver strong ROI, how they produce results that are measurable, that are accountable, that will help the organization to grow. And so communicating that message, forwarding this webinar to a CFO would certainly help them to understand what it's all about. So education is the key. Spending some time talking about those important things, very important.
Ed wants to know, what's a good return rate for unaddressed ad mail?
Well, you know, that's a very difficult question to answer, because unaddressed ad mail, depending on the industry that you're in, can have response rates ranging from 1 or 2 per thousand up to 2 or 3%. So it really depends. If you're a retailer and you have a very geo-localized business where you have a very defined trading area and a high density of use of the product category, you can expect very significant response rates, you know, in 1, 2, 3%. Certainly not unheard of. The lower the incidence of product use in the marketplace and the more diffuse your market is, the less you're going to get in terms of overall response. So without being able to say specifically this is what's good, you know, I'd just like to put that in perspective. Depends is the easiest answer for that.
Okay. I have a question from Amanda. She's saying, for direct mail such as letters, how do you effectively use content and media such as pictures to communicate an experience?
Specifically in letters, that's definitely a challenge, because the purpose of the letter is really to establish a personal communication, a personal contact with the reader. So there's actually research that would demonstrate that an illustrated letter is less effective in producing a strong result. The imagery, photography, and so on is best used in the perhaps the brochure, or some kind of lift note, or some kind of buckslip that would be added into the package, or even on the outer envelope. Of course, you can design a more colorful letterhead around it using imagery as well, and we did that in the Tremblant case. But typically you would not. What you want to use is variable copy to create the relevance in your letter, making sure that your message is very personal in tone, in manner, and talks to things that are relevant to the customer.
Perfect. Another question is, what suggestions do you have to better understand the customer journey?
Well, understanding the customer journey is a very complex thing, and I think intuitively we understand some of the things that are involved in the decision-making process. So do customers go to the website? Well, in most cases they do, so web is going to play an important role. Is there something that can be shown in a very dramatic way using video? So YouTube and you know, social video becomes a powerful tool in creating that connection. So, you know, intuitively we understand some of the stages involved. Marketing research can help us also to understand the path to purchase of our customers. There's some interesting studies available through organizations such as Forrester that talk about the path to purchase and some of the different media that are used at different stages. Also speaking to frontline employees who have direct contact with the customers to be able to understand what the customers are telling them about their journey and the things that they've done to get to that point. So those are some of the possibilities. But it is, in fact, a very complex endeavor, and it is an evolution as we understand it. We deepen our comprehension and try different things at different stages to see how we can make that better over time.
I have another question, probably the last due to the time. What are your recommendations for one-off type of purchase, or purchase made only once every 10 plus years, like mattress or windows or even funeral arrangements?
Well, You know, that's a more difficult relationship to build, and I think the value is, first of all, in establishing pre-purchase a good communication program that builds a nurturing of that relationship until the actual purchase itself. So the pre-purchase stage is critically important, and then understanding that many of these products also lend themselves to a word-of-mouth campaign after purchase. So I think of Windows as a great example, where all of a sudden if you buy or change all of your windows, all of your neighbors become prospective customers. So how do you build that experience, build the relationship prior, and then after the purchase, how do you get the customer to share their experience with their friends and family? That kind of relationship can be of value as well.
Perfect. Just a final note, I was getting questions about setting up the presentation. We will be sending out a link where you can download the presentation, but it will be at the end of the series. We are at number 2 of a 4-part series, so it should be around June 20th. All right, so that will close the presentation.
Rodrigo,
the Q&A. Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we recognize the sponsors that have made this possible. We've invested a lot of time and energy in creating this series and the conferences we've had around the world, around the country, and it wouldn't have been possible without the participation of XMPi, which is a Xerox company, Xerox itself, the Lowe Martin Group, and first and foremost of Canada Post, for being the champion of this program and making it available to the marketing community. So thank you very much to all of the organizations involved in this project.
Perfect. And just before signing off, we have our third part in our series, which will be on direct mail targeting and media. So understand how a relationship perspective changes the way you select media, shifting your priority from reach to quality and conversion. And this webinar will be happening on Tuesday, June 11th from 12 to 1 o'clock as well. And I will be sending out some links to where you can register for this webinar. And this webinar will also be presented by Mark. So on behalf of Mark and myself and our sponsors, we wish you a great day and talk to you soon. We hope you enjoyed the webinar and that you found it useful and that you learned something. Take care.
Thank you.